Life and business can be easy, but us silly humans love getting in our own way. My name is Nico Rapclis, and I've had a wild journey. From releasing traumas that I held on to for decades, to playing college athletics, working with multi-million-dollar brands, having a spiritual awakening, and now coaching incredible humans navigate their inner and outer world. The Just Grow podcast is my outlet to share and help others with life and business. After investing north of $100,000 into my personal and professional development, the Woo plus Do formula is what has served me best. A healthy combination of mindset, energetics, consciousness, spirituality, self-healing, and discovery, matched with a high-level strategy, principles, focus, optimization, and accountability to help you be, do, and have everything that has been placed in your heart. This podcast is for the impact-driven entrepreneur that is finally ready to start thriving internally and externally. Welcome to Just Grow. Yo, what's happening, my friends? Welcome to the Just Grow podcast. So pumped to have you here on this particular episode. My name is Nico Rapclis, if you're new here. On this particular episode, we had on James Dixon. He is the man behind the Absolute Motivation YouTube channel, has nearly 1.5 million subscribers. They've generated over 130 million views, and the page is absolutely blown up. And he, as a speaker, is absolutely blown up. He has an incredible, wild story. And it's just, we had a great conversation about really how to persevere past challenges and change your perspective and mindset so that you can really tackle anything. So really excited to jump into this. Before we do, want to let you know about the next Just Grow podcast live event. It is going to be on May 11th. It's going to be in the Biltmore area. You can head over to justgrowpodcast.com to check out all the information. It's going to be with my good friend Akshay, who's about to go set a world record that has never been done before, all by himself, traversing Antarctica coast to coast. It's going to be 1,700 miles, 110 days, while dragging a 400-pound sled. It's going to be remarkable. We're going to talk a lot about that. We're going to talk about how to become magnetic, raise capital, build a high-value network. We're going to have breath work. We're going to have cash giveaways. We're going to have a lot of surprises. It's going to be a lot of fun. So head on over to justgrowpodcast.com. But without further ado, let's jump in this interview with James Dixon. Well, James, thank you for being here. Appreciate your time, man.
Nico, man, I'm honored. I love the journey that you shared with the world and how you're allowing other people to grow through the same process you are.
Thank you, man. I received that. Well, it's been interesting, with the guests that we have on this podcast. Usually it's people that I know for a decent amount of time, but we met very recently through our good friends Michael and Blake, who I just admire and respect deeply. And they just told me how amazing you are, and I got to start diving through some of your content, and I got to obviously hear you speak and share your powerful stories. So again, just really honored to have you here and for you to just to share some time with you.
Well, I'm honored to be here. Mike and Blake have created the ideal platform, the ideal relationships building. Honored to watch them grow and be connected to them. But it's great meeting you. Your humility, the way you communicate, and what you're about is why I said yes.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So, one of the things that I always love kind of hearing, and I know you probably shared this story a fair bit, but I think it's powerful, and I think the audience would really appreciate it, and I would definitely love to hear even further depths of it. But you had your leg, it's an amputee, right?
Absolutely. I lost my leg when I was 11, but I spent 33 surgeries leading up to that, starting when I was just 3 months of age. Every 6 months, I was going in for surgery, always thinking that somehow, some way, this is going to correct things and allow me to walk. That never happened. It wasn't until the amputation that I was then put in position that I would be able to walk, move, and become who I am today.
I'm sure like now you look back and you have that perspective, but like going through that, it's like, where were you at mentally and emotionally with
Man,
that?
I got to tell you, one of the biggest challenges I had mentally was in acceptance. Am I enough? Why is it that I'm not loved? What do I need to do to get love? I'm trying my best to get acknowledgement, acceptance. And what I found is the validation I sought for wasn't ever going to become available. It just wasn't in the network that I had. But I had one individual my grandmother, who provided me with an unconditional love.
Mhm.
That type of love became the platform for me to build my whole life behind. Having one person that can believe in you until you can learn to believe in yourself can make all the difference.
I resonate with that deeply. I had a grandmother that passed in the last few years, and we definitely had a special connection. And I just relate to that so much because, you know, I've gone through my bouts of belief and having that confidence and conviction in myself. And the thing that I constantly come back to is that I just have such amazing people around me that believe in me and, you know, hype me up, talk me up. And, you know, sometimes like I really needed those when I didn't have that belief in myself, and just to get like a voice message or a text message or a phone call, have a phone call with a good friend, just giving you some outside perspective and sharing how much like you've impacted them. It goes a long way. And just to your point is I've even heard that quote before. It says like sometimes we just need someone that believes in us more than we believe in ourselves.
Mm. Well, it resonates with me because it was true. Someone that can tell you what you will be when no one else sees it, and it gives you a blueprint. And the architect of life is how God directs, orders your steps, and then ultimately you find yourself in a situation where what that positive influence said is absolutely true. But it's true, more true than what you may imagine. My grandmother believed that I could be a symbol of hope to others, and so she nicknamed me Superman. So I've never been a fan of the cartoon. I was a fan of the concept, of the idea that in spite of what happens to you, you can be a force for good. And so my idea, my concept, my mantra in life is about becoming more so I can serve more.
Because it all starts inside. I know from my journey and the people I've talked to and coached and helped is like the human in us sees all the things that we want. And we're like, I want to go get those things, the money, the relationship, the cars, the house, whatever it is. But as we continue on this journey, and what I've discovered is it all starts within. We're always the problem, and we're always the solution.
That is. You mentioned something in cars and things. None of my goals, none of my vision board, nothing I want in my life is to do with anything material. Everything that I want in my life has to do with um, kind of like healing old wounds from the time that I wasn't able to get up and interact, things that are missing work, going to work. So I missed all the events my kids were having because I worked second shift. So getting freedom of time by becoming who I am today, it means the world to me because now I have time for my children to do amazing things. Now I have time to do everything I want to do in life. And I make sure that I don't allow anything to interrupt that because I know that that's the pattern that matters. It's not the car, it's not the stuff. It's great when you're building it, you know, writing down the plans, you look at designs, but then after a while you walk in it and it's just a house. But a home is the thing that's different. That's the relationships in the home, in the house, you know? And so those are more powerful, more important, more valuable.
Well, there's a few things that I'd like to riff off of there, but I I, I really am big on the whole concept of time and getting time back. And just what you said, it's we I heard a I heard a quote recently, and it was actually a sales training, and it was like some training on closing, and basically a close was saying that you'll like if someone was like considering investing into a program, and the close is essentially you're gonna invest in this either way. You're either going to put down money to invest in this program to learn exactly what we teach, or you're not going to invest financially and you're going to go figure it out on your own. You're going to go YouTube, you're going to go talk to people, and you're going to invest time. into this program, essentially. And that you will always spend, everyone always spends the currency that they value the least. And that really hit me because I think for like historically speaking in my life, I have had kind of the mindset of like, oh, I'll go figure it out and I'll spend my time on these things. But it's just been in my awareness a lot lately of that I starting to realize that I value time a lot more.
Yeah, time is the one thing you can't replace. Money, energy, all that you can deal with. But money is the least valuable of all your assets.
So what would you say to somebody that, is kind of having that awareness and like, okay, I understand time is really valuable. Um, how do I start getting back my time more?
Well, I got to tell you, here's one way to do it. It's when you calculate the cost of something. You look at it and go, at the end of my life, if all my children think of is that I showed them love because the lights were on at the house, they had Jordans, they were able to play sports, there's food in the refrigerator. That is an expression of love. It doesn't replace your presence. The last thing you want is for the equity of the value of your relationship to show up at your funeral. When friends and family, coworkers who spend more time with you than family did, get up and say, when he was a kid, he was this way. That's when you have freedom of time. And then other people are like, if you'd have known him in high school, still freedom of time. The next group will say in college, this guy was this way, still freedom of time.
Hmm.
Then it gets into your adulthood and it comes to coworkers. They're like, hard worker, dedicated, always there. Now your kids are listening to those attributes and they don't admire any of them because those were the enemies that robbed time. And so they're like, your dad put in 30 years. I wish you could have seen him. I mean, this one time your dad, he was, and they tell stories that kids didn't even know because they didn't experience the life you lived. They only saw the fatigued, worn out, disappearing you. So if you were to calculate it all back in the end, oftentimes I'm with men and women at the time of hospice. And the one thing they always asked for and wish they had was time, time with family. It is the most valuable, precious piece of equity you ever own.
It's finite, right? It's the only thing that like once it's passed, it's gone. I even saw this thing. It was like on social media where it was talking about how like this was a moment and then it turned into a memory. And it was like it made this like camera click where it was like we were experiencing it and then all of a sudden it like faded out. So I definitely like understand that conceptually, but I would just also be curious if you have any even tactical advice on how do you really start how do you really start like you have the cost. I hear that 100%. But then like what are some like steps that you've gone through to get back your time?
I got to tell you, one of the things I did was when I quit my job and sensed the security and stepped into the insecure world of being an entrepreneur because I wanted to have the time with my family. But I also knew that I had to live every moment like it could be my last. It means there was no longer waiting on. Think about this. If you're getting $45 an hour at General Motors, in order for the employer to pay me that, they had to be making more than $45 an hour to employ me and all the others.
Yeah.
So I want you to get this idea. You will never be paid what you're worth. The only way that you can do that is to be an entrepreneur. So to go out and do something that would pay me for my time and to spend time doing what my purpose, my passion, my family would enjoy. My kids could say, I want to follow in those footprints. Well, this is what it's about. How did I redeem it? I quit security, got into an insecure platform, and then built my own sense of security based on my skill set.
Hmm. It's been big for me lately in even the last couple of years now is like that whole concept. Because what I hear in that is courage. Because fear is going to be there. I don't feel like there's always going to be another fear that comes up. Like once you conquer that fear, I don't think it's necessarily about getting rid of fear. I think it's more about developing courage and the tenacity to like work through that fear. And I strongly agree with really entrepreneurship is really the only way if you want to be able to, write your own checks and write your own time. Why
Well,
don't
I'm
you
going to say
share?
something. You mentioned that fear evolves or becomes something different. And maybe I'm different in this regard. I no longer have fear.
Hmm.
Man, I've kind of lived with this idea that the fears I had died because the biggest monsters in the room weren't in the closet or under the bed. It was in the bed with me in my own head. And when I discovered that the world won't stop if I embarrassingly wear shorts and have people stare at me and make me feel awkward, that was my biggest fear. My biggest fear is that I wouldn't be loved. That my children would be born disabled. None of those big fears happened. They lived with me a long time. And when I overcame them, I lost fear because everything else was minor. Those were my majors. And if I can overcome those majors, there are no minors for me. I
So
do not have
how did you overcome that? You said one of your biggest fears was not feeling loved. How did you
yeah,
overcome that?
but I didn't think anybody would love me because, I went through experiences where being mocked, ridiculed, bullied, you name it, based on the fact that I lost a limb. And trying to date growing up, and girls were like, hey, if it wasn't for your leg, well, I don't want to be known as the girl that dated the guy with one leg. That idea, that concept put fear in me, thinking that no one would love me. And when I found that that wasn't true, that was the biggest fear. That had nothing to do with that. That I am more than the sum of my parts. I'm a whole man at all times. And to be made whole, man, there's a void that's in us all. For me, my faith was filled by the fact that I finally understood it went from theory to practical stuff that God does love me. Made me unique and wonderfully made by him, custom, one of a kind. And brother, when I say I don't live in fear, I mean I have no fear.
Hmm.
None. I'm not even worried if my bank account got down to $30 right now. I still have all the skill set to rebuild. So I'm not going to worry about it. I won't because I've been there before and I've rebuilt it. I've wasted the equity of being worried about before and then saw money come in. I've given away money down on my last and saw it come back. I do not live in fear.
Hmm.
I don't have one.
What would you say to somebody that is living in fear?
Man, here's it. You got two things that are true. Whether you want to accept it or not, one of them is true, either your faith or your fears. They both will have weight. But just like it is in a gym, if one side outweighs the other, it'll make you off. You have to be able to balance it and then understand once you lift that thing, faith increases. All of a sudden, fear begins. If you do this, what if you fail? It's all the what ifs, it's internal conversations. If you can learn to put that stuff on mute and just try, you'll discover that you're bigger and better than ever imagined. Whether it be a deadlift and you got to lift this thing up, you got to be able to understand that you have to go to a place unwilling. There are women who have picked up cars to save their children.
Hmm.
I'm talking about non-gym women. I'm talking about a stay-at-home mom who was in traffic, here she is in New York. Car comes up, hits her kid, and she lifted the car and picked her baby. Why was she able to do it? It was because the fear of her child dying and sitting there waiting on someone, she was like, I can't do it. And God gave her the adrenaline and the power and the will to lift and do something that seemed to be extraordinary. The truth is, you always have the potential to tap into that. You just got to be wanting it. You got to go after it. You got to be able to click that switch. So if you're feeling fear, one, you're alive. That's a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
Two, if fear is there, faith is also in the same realm. You got to be willing to tap into one of them. If it's the fear, then faith will die. But if you can trust and trust that faith, fear will leave the room.
Thank you for that. I felt like that was just such a gift.
Oh no, I'm honored, brother. They're sharing from the heart to the heart.
And that's what I feel, man. And that's like one once we like really had we had some a quick chat, I realized what kind of heart you had. And I can feel it. And the other thing I hear in your story is that like, you don't have fear because you experienced success and losing it all, success and losing it all, and you have that experience. Do you feel like it's about going through those experiences and that's what allows you to lose that
Oh
fear?
man. Yeah, listen, this is how I came up with this. If you want to become something, you got to go through something.
Hmm.
You have to. And if you find your way through it, that means you created a pathway. Man, you already made it. Sometimes we just don't have anyone to honor and validate that, but it's already true.
Yeah. Wow. Because I did a podcast interview a few weeks back and it was a really impressive guy, really just heart-centered person as well. And he said that God gives you your insecurities so that you can work through them and become the best version of yourself. Because if you didn't have them, you wouldn't be so motivated to work through them.
If you didn't have a challenge, really, every road has um, the speed limit. Every road you get on, there's one posted. At least you think so until you travel the world and you find out that there are some places that don't have it. And you find out that your insecurities and fears of the speed limits that were posted, you're comfortable with someone else setting a governor on you. But what happens when that comes off? What happens when you're in a situation in life where you don't have others to coast off, draft off of? When you get to the point where you learn that there's something about you that you've got to discover. How far will you go if there were no limits? I want to live a life without limitation. And the more that I do things, the more I write down goals and dreams, things that I thought would take years have happened in weeks. Even when I wrote down the biggest ones, I never thought as being a speaker that I should write down one of my goals is to win a Grammy. But what happened is people started taking clips of me speaking, putting it on reels. And the more they did that, it made it a trending song. Next thing I know, 720 million people have used me and put me up for a Grammy. That's not even something you dream of doing. Who thinks someone would take your voice and make it an audio track? And people would use it so much that it becomes a trending song. And it's just you talking. That's why when it comes to casting dreams and visions, man, you never know how big the dream because the we serve a God who's infinite, and He will give you infinite opportunities and moments to be used, and He'll let your life breed echoes that live beyond your lifetime. Maybe because He left us His word, He gives us words. Think how men have been immortalized by saying something like, I have a dream. Ask not what you can do for your country, what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Men have spoken words, and words have changed the world. If it was in them, it's also in you. As you're coaching people, you're pulling out what's been left in. But you wouldn't be able to do that if you didn't.
Oh, I think you muted yourself. He's back. I think you got muted there for a second, James.
No problem. I'm back, brother. Go ahead.
I just, wow. I really, these days, I tend to like take my time a little bit more in responding. That metaphor of the speed limit, like what if you didn't put any limitations on yourself? I like that question these days, like what if? Like what if you took off the limitations? What if you played full out? How
See,
does that, I guess, two-part question. Like, how does that feel to have millions of people, in your words, using your voice?
well, let's think of it this way. So, 1.5 million people subscribe to the YouTube channel. To have
Absolute motivation. Would love to plug that as well.
That's a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
But to have people around the world learn who you are because you finally came off of mute. What it what it feels like for me is responsibility,
Mm.
accountability. And so I don't think of uh like what should I come up with? How do I say this in a cooler way?
Mm.
And be honest with you, every time that I'm up talking, I'm just going off of what I feel at the moment. I pull out of my living. So, like, James, what about your speech? How do you come up with stuff? Perhaps I've been blessed with somewhat of a photographic memory because I can read something. And there are things I've read in the sixth grade that I still know verbatim. Just read it one time, right? So sometimes it just gives you some natural gifts. But the gifts isn't just retention, it's being able to pull that out of you, right? And if I can pour that out of myself, and man, I am discovering there's levels to me. And so it wasn't just about being an amputee and talking to amputees, nor was it about talking to veterans. But I had to stop being about me and make it about we. So let me give you what that means, because it sounds like a cute quote. When I say it's about we, I go from I lost a limb to we all suffer loss. But suffering loss isn't suffering, it's a pathway. It's to finding what you were here for in the first place. Nico, the traumas you went through were not to break you. This is the stuff that God put in your pathway to pull out a warrior
Mm.
who can be trusted as a special ops person who won't go through training. Not as a general soldier, everyone can have the call, but to be chosen, to be gifted with the gift of coaching and pushing other people into their destiny. You must go through some stuff. Everything that you've experienced, every heartbreak, and I don't know if how you feel about this, but I'll tell you, every failure you've had, I hope you had a ton of them. Because in order to be great, you had to suffer great first.
Mm.
There is no way around it. The trauma wasn't drama. The trauma was milestones. So you could choose, will I be the villain and make everybody pay for what happened to me? Or will I be the superhero? It says, because of me, no one else will go through this.
Mm. Man, I could just sit here and listen to you talk all day long. And it's so true. It's like I'm constantly reminded about like when we do go through those challenges that if we zoom out far enough, we realize that they're all just blessings. Like in the day to day when we're going through those challenges, when it's zoomed in so much, just like a stock chart that's trending up, like you look up and it looks like it's trending down, but if you zoom out, you see that it's just a dip. And oftentimes those most times, if not every time, like those challenges are the dips that are the catalyst for propelling us forward. So it's almost as if we look forward to the challenges.
Think of the dips as like a trampoline. The only way to go up higher on the trampoline is to dig deeper. You got to go lower. You got to hit it lower. You got to have such a big dip in order to reach new heights. You don't get to new peaks without going deeper. You got to keep hitting it lower, get deeper. And the thing is, the deeper you go, that doesn't bury you, man. No, it gives you depth.
Hmm.
That's why if I tell someone I love them, I can honestly say it and mean it because I know the power of love. I know what I mean by that because I was devoid of it.
Hmm.
If I was to live a charmed life and all I've ever experienced was nothing but favor, support, if I threw nothing but touchdowns and no interceptions, if I never experienced loss and had the greatest story career of all time, would I ever understand the real lessons of life? No,
Hmm.
because it's skewed. It's like playing a video game with a cheat mode that allows you invincibility. So you experience something different, but it's because you're giving yourself an advantage that isn't real. Take the cheat code off, what happens? Who are you if you don't have youth anymore? Who are you if you don't have money anymore? Who are you if you didn't have the same people around you as scaffolds? You and I are building into trend, and what it takes to make a man of impact is that he must face something. And what I love about you is that many things you faced already in your young years. The version of you that will change the world is coming. For all the people you coached them on your life experiences. But podcasts, interviewing people, is like downloading a book of life from so many different sources and people. You're learning from so many different ones that you're living multiple lifetimes at once, which accelerates your development and allows you to coach people at a whole different area. This is an authentic growth and training. This isn't like uh, some of the guys on social media that are called coaches who have all those fake followers. You can buy 1 million, you can buy 609,000 followers, and then it ends up being 100 likes, and people can realize that there's no one engaging with you because it's all perception, and people want reality.
Hmm.
I'd rather have 1,000 followers and 400 people respond than to pay for 1 million and get 400 people responding. Why put on pretense when you can become the real thing and you are being authenticated through life? I appreciate and I respect that about you.
Thank you. I received that. And the thing that I'm constantly asking myself and other people is like, why are you doing what you're doing? And if you like, why would you buy a bunch of followers? Like, what's the point behind that? Just to get a perception?
No, 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 no. They want perception so they can con other people. You see, if I buy 609,000 and I'm sitting in Sophie Stadium and I've got uh, all these different things that I've purchased and I've got on pretense and no one knows the reality of who I really am. Then I go out and sell that snake oil to people and they're validating an invalid man or woman. Here's the thing: when people say, "Hey, look at you! You got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. That's amazing accomplishments." Do you know what it takes to get a star? Do you know what it takes to get a star?
Mm-mm.
$75,000. Doesn't matter who you are and what you've done. If you've got 75,000, you can go get a star today. But the perception is that you did something transactional in life where everyone else benefited and there's receipts. No, don't pay for false reality, because the imposter syndrome that you're living in is not a syndrome. And playing the imposter comes to reality, because one day you'll face God. The other days you'll face a mirror. And you know, to beyond all the other people, that you are real. There's nothing worse than pretending to be someone and never being able to come out of character.
Hmm.
Mr. T, do you know who that is?
Sounds familiar.
He was a character case. What about Hulk Hogan?
Yeah.
What's Hulk Hogan's real name?
Great
See,
question.
you can play a character so long that no one even knows who you really are. You have to stop playing characters and just be you, because the real you is so original and authentic. It is more valuable than any character you play.
Hmm. What's your vision moving forward?
My last breath will be, I'll be surrounded by family and not media. I will have already have left an echo for my children to follow. This podcast, for example. My son is 50 and he's going back over, and there's an AI grabbing all the things about me.
Hmm.
And he's the age I am today. He can sit and listen to his father. At the end of my life,
Oh, hit mute again. James, you're on mute.
for them to hear my last words, and the words would go something like this: I go the way of all the earth. Show thyself a man. In other words, son, look in the mirror. Don't look for how much you resemble me. Look in the mirror and show yourself the man you were supposed to become. Be proud of that. My friend, those are not just my words. They were the words that David said to his son. After you've had all the titles and all the rules, all those die, and all you have left is your real identity. And I want them to have learned all they can from me, to have advanced their names, the last name, to have given it pride, given it dignity. For my voice to always be available to echo on the earth. That's why a life worth living is also a life worth recording.
Mhm.
That's what you're doing. These podcasts aren't just for you. It's for the future. It comes from you. One day, your grandchildren will watch your videos and discover the real man you were. So it matters what we say. My friend, thank you for having me on today, for taking time with me and letting me into your world.
Thank you, brother. Where can people find you, and how can they? I know you have a book out, so I want to make sure that people know where to go to get all your stuff.
Yeah. You know what, Nico, I'm going to say, it doesn't matter about following me. I want them to continue to support you.
Mhm.
You're bringing people of impact and importance to them. I don't need to sell more books. I don't need to get more subscribers or followers. What I do need is authentic relationships like the one you and I are establishing. Let's keep on becoming authentic. Let's keep real. The world will discover and find us. Word of mouth will travel enough. I'm honored to know you, honored to have been on. Thank you for having me on your show, man. It's time
Thank
to
you for
grow.
being here. It has been an honor to just spend some time with you.
All right. Thank you, my friend.